I can't be any other place than this, however hard it gets. Coming up from this ground, rooted in this dirt. I know the things that we are, and they sustain me. I went away, I leave and I come back home. I come back to stay. I must find a way. I went away, away to the foreign cold. Tried to run away from my destiny. In another world, a world that was strange to me. Try to change myself, to change my identity. But strong is the power of love and the power of freedom. The power of belonging fills my heart, yeah. I must see my way. I went away, I leave and I come back home. I come back to stay. I must find my way.
Well, welcome everyone. My name is Pablo Zuniga. I'm the director of the Art Museum of the Americas here at the Organization of American States in Washington, D.C. We're so excited that you've made the afternoon to spend with us. So welcome to a literary tour of Wendy Nanan, live streaming with poets. Wendy Nanan is a visual artist from Trinidad and Tobago whose solo show was about to open at the Art Museum of the Americas when we closed due to the pandemic. The show will resume as soon as the museum opens in the near future. In the meantime, we have organized a series of exhibitions through our social media platforms. We call these exhibitions hashtag Ama at Home or hashtag Ama en Casa. This event that we are enjoying today is the conclusion of an 8-day exhibition, hashtag Wendy Nanan, which you will be able to enjoy on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. For those of you who don't know, the Art Museum of the Americas is the first museum of Latin American and Caribbean modern art in the United States. It's part of the Organization of American States. It's part of our public diplomacy program to reach to the people of the world and communicate the values that are shared here in the hemisphere: democracy, human rights, development, security. Wendy Nanan's show is an important show. It's an important show on many levels. And one of the important levels is that it's highlighting the importance of the Caribbean, especially of Caribbean women. And so I'm very honored that we have a senior Caribbean diplomat who is going to open and give some opening remarks. We have today Ambassador Jacinth Henry Martin. Ambassador Henry Martin was the former ambassador of St. Kitts and Nevis here in Washington, and she is currently a senior advisor and the coordinator of the national offices. Ambassador Henry Martin also is a poet. So I'm very excited about you being with us, Ambassador. So please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Pablo. I recognize you, Pablo Zuniga, the AMA director, the Art Museum of the Americas. I want to recognize, I understand she is not with us today, but I want to recognize the spirit and the gift of participation of the guest of honor, Wendy Nanan, presenting poets, Andre Bagoo, Seebaran, and Shivanee Ramlochan. I hope I call those names correctly, but I'm reaching out to you and honoring your participation here with us today. I also want to recognize Andil Gosine, who is the curator, and the team that must have been very hard at work with Pablo on making sure that this became a reality. Viewing audience, OS colleagues, I recognize you. It is my pleasant duty to greet you on behalf of Assistant Secretary General of the OS, Ambassador Nestor Mendez. And at the very onset, to thank you for this initiative, which presents a pleasant distraction from the reality of COVID-19 and the implications of the pandemic on the mundanes of our everyday lives. Present reality is fixed. It is rooted in the now, the unknown elements of an invisible threat to our lives. The arts are just as real, a language that is full of color, vibrancy, innate but palpable, and an energy that also can be transmitted from one artist to many persons at the same time. A beautiful contagion that heals rather than debilitates, that inspires rather than demotivates those who can share in its offerings. The truth is that there are very few medicines that can speak to us holistically in the way that the arts can. In the best of times, when we are in full control of our surroundings and can shape the direction in which we aspire to advance, we are inspired by the master artist who shaped nature and our surroundings, and always by the arts in all its manifestations. How much more do we need these outlets for drawing us into new adventures, for reminding us of the multifaceted, multi-ethnic, multi-talented beings that we are? I am particularly happy to join you today as an artist myself, and as is the case of Assistant Secretary General Mendez, as one who was born and raised in the Caribbean. The OAS and its Art Museum of the Americas recognize the value in exhibiting the broad spectrum of the talent of the people of the Americas. And for that to be truly reflective of the richness of our cultural and artistic diversity, this must include the talents of our brothers and sisters of the Caribbean and speak to their stories, their perspectives, the context of their past, present, and future in their visual and oral manifestations. And so today is an even more important milestone because today the AMA will be presenting the first CARICOM woman artist to have a solo show. I applaud the achievement of this milestone for the OAS and the Arts Museum of the Americas. It is innovative and instructive at the same time. We have attained a goal, perhaps in making this a reality, but we must be consistent in advancing. The Caribbean is a story of artists. Caribbean people are all artists across genres, across styles, across media and art forms, across traditional and non-traditional theaters. And the OS can and must continue to showcase their work. Let me close by reiterating appreciation to featured artist Wendy Nanan and to congratulate you, Ms. Nanan, for your talents and for being selected to exhibit with the AMA, which is the home to pieces of incalculable cultural value from across the Americas. Thank you to poets Bhagu, Seebaran, and Ramlochan for your words, for your voice, for your reflections, for speaking from the soul. We will be all ears, relating and listening. To the viewing audience, welcome. Thank you for being here. This would be meaningless without you. On behalf of Assistant Secretary General Mendez, I bid you bienvenido, welcome, bienvenido, bienvenue. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Henry Martin. And with that, I would like to turn it over to the curator of Wendy Nanan's exhibit here at the Art Museum of the Americas. I'm referring to and will present Andil Gosine. He is Professor of Environmental Art and Justice at York University in Toronto, where his research and teaching, as well as his curatorial and arts practice, is groundbreaking on questions about migration, cultural hybridity, and desire. He has authored many scholarly publications, including the forthcoming Nature's Wild, Sex, Love, and Law in the Caribbean. And his most recent solo exhibition was Revenir, which returned him to his birthplace of Trinidad and Tobago. The current exhibit, Wendy Nanan, is his first, I hope of many, curatorial endeavors here with the Art Museum of the Americas. Andil, the show is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you are well and in good spirits wherever you are. Before we begin, I just want to underline that on behalf of Wendy and of all the poets assembled today, we would like to express our full solidarity with and also full appreciation and admiration for the Black Lives Matter global movement and the work they're doing on behalf of us to achieve a fair and just world. Later this year, when the AMA reopens, we will unveil a piece from Wendy's show that is deeply resonant with these times and, of course, with the COVID pandemic in her first interactive sculptural installation, Breath. So thank you for taking the time to join us in the context of everything that is happening around us. And thanks immensely to Pablo, to Adriana, Greg, Fabia, Nuria, and others at the AMA for all the wonderful and enthusiastic support they have given to this project. And to Ambassador Henry Martin for your beautiful invocation today. We really appreciate it. And of course, to Wendy. So 5 months ago, I was with Wendy in Trinidad, and this was our carnival tune of the season, Boss Lady by Kes. The song brought back to Wendy fond memories of her mother and me of my grandmother. And I remember sitting in the car with her and we were singing along to it and starting to have a chat about, this very particular way in which the song connected to us. And it's true of the kind of deep connection I felt with Wendy since we first met in 2016, when I invited her to participate in a workshop in Toronto. And that connection and that chemistry and also that love and appreciation for her work have wanted me to really commit myself to this project for the last 4 years. We were preparing for this exhibition 5 months ago, and for the first time in as long as anyone can remember, Wendy was going to be present for the opening of her exhibition in DC. For those of you wondering, Wendy has always chosen not to be present at her openings because she finds that an artist's presence can often be a distraction from engagement with her art. So that's also why she's not present today, even though I really tried to cajole her into doing this. But she really prefers that we discuss her art without the distraction of her presence. And it's also why, since the film covers so much of her biography, I'm going to dive right away into her work and to the work of the guests that we've brought together today. Today, that engagement will come from 3 exceptional poets zooming in from or just adjacent to her hometown of Port of Spain, each of whom will read new work inspired by Wendy's art: Desiree Seebaran, Shivanee Ramlochan, and Andre Bagoo. I have paired each poet with a piece from the show, and we'll go in order of their appearance in the gallery. So almost as if we're walking through the gallery space a little through this exhibition. Although we don't have video of the gallery space because literally it closed down during mid-installation. So as we proceed with this literary tour of Wendy Nanan, please do share your thoughts and questions online as Adriana is collecting them, and we will definitely have a discussion at the end. And there are some also really important folks who are attending today that I'd like to give a little shout out to at the end. I'll mention for Wendy's sister, Deborah Nanan, is with us, and there are a few other people I'd like to call out when we get to the end of it. And I have a special announcement at the end too. So we begin with Persona and Shivanee Ramlochan. So Wendy completed Persona in 1984, a representation of her autobiography up to that point. And we see references from both special and difficult moments over the course of her life. So if you went to look closely at each of these pieces, you will see a reference to this lovely ritual of going to Mayaro Beach with her parents. You will see her in her school uniform. And to bring this work alive, I've called upon Shivanee Ramlochan. Shivanee is a Trinidadian poet, book reviewer, blogger, and essayist. Her first book of poems, her wonderful first book of poems, I should say, it's on the shelf right there. Everyone Knows I'm a Haunting has been shortlisted or been a finalist for several awards, including the 2018 People's Choice Trinidad and Tobago Book of the Year and the Felix Dennis Forward Prize. She's also the recipient of fellowships and residencies from the Bread Loaf Writers Conference and the Malay Colony. She has served as a poetry reader and editorial judge for Commonwealth Writers, Honeysuckle Press, Moko Magazine, and other institutions. And you can find more of Shivanee's work online at novelniche.net. Shivanee, I turn it over to you.
Hello, everyone. It's a real honor and a delight to be here. I'd like to begin by thanking the incomparably generous Andil Gosine, without whom this engagement would not be possible, and the tremendous inspiration of the work of Wendy Nanan, and also to the AMA for being such gracious hosts of these endeavors in Caribbean space, which, as we know, exists everywhere and is not confined geographically or politically. In spending time with Persona, a series of things happened. First, I reflected on the fact that the work was completed before I was born, and that invoked a great sense of humility for the work that Wendy has been doing, and the fact that all Caribbean artists come from, are inspired and moved by a deep and persevering lineage of communion and interconnection. It occurred to me that Persona takes us through so many stages and phases of an artist's life, not just an artist, but a dreamer, a keen feeler in the world's landscape of viciousness and hurt, alienation and xenophobia, and it has inspired a corresponding cycle of poems that are demarcated by their physical locations, and I would like to share the first two of these. The first is called Mangrove. Mangrove. We take the last birding boat to the mouth of the mangrove. This is what I wanted to show you. The estuaries of dark wood under your palm, your grip on the prow as she stutters, the killing of the engine in the low light. We could turn back, swim to the place my grandfather was burned. No concrete hull of crematorium, only riverbank, only fish choking on bone. You lean over the side of the pirogue, trailing incandescent flesh in the waterline. We are here to see scarlet ibis, and yet I could tell you of the tarpon that grow fat on human remains, of the hunters, thrashing and coiled, that goldness of scales of the intertidal depths, waiting below dragonfly thrum and the gossip of caimans. I could sing you down to the roots that cradle the wreckage of the drowned children never found, of the bullets like black pearls that glower in the eyes of swamp boas who swallow them, going blind. You raise your head for the murmuration. The flock moves above us, starry feathers of wet red, of bird shit, and you are raising your pale hands now, your mouth praying, bless this feast of prodigal wings, the way each ibis knows she must soar with the rest or be lost, trespassing the border between Venezuela and home. This is what I wanted to show you. When I was 9, we burned my grandfather at the banks of the Caroni River. The line between sanctuary and burning house is never far. I learned this when I was just a girl, how the trail of bones resembles a map of blunt beaks, how you could walk from crematory to bird reserve with a mouth leaking water and ash, eager to hold what you can hold before it sinks beneath the mud. You, interloper to the hinterland, your hair flushed like the inner meat of an ibis, you, cheeked in the bite of discovery, you stand as the birds fly over you, tumbling with your mouth agape as a grouper's, my hand reaching out as the mangrove slices open. Alone, returning. The sunset dapples small snakes of red on my arms. The second poem is called Canefield, and before I offer it, I would like to say again how deeply grateful I am to Wendy's visioning of her work, of herself and other bodies and states of being in her work, and how it has, in unexpected and challenging and industrious ways, motivated me to help articulate so many of the movements of emotion in these poems. I'm really eager to continue working on them while living closely with the work Wendy has made. Thank you, Wendy. Canefield. The girl that rises from the cane field will have blood on her thighs. Don't run from her ghost. Stop. Stand there in the tall sugar and let her taste your sweat. Let her lick the litany of your children's names from your diamond-cut bearer. Her name is Kalauti. Fit, bony knees like sharp moth wings. Drowned in the village well, her first year on this island. Heavy, pregnant, and 13. Her name is Indrawati. Heavy voice of hot ghee, honeying each bhajan. Hair scraped back from her forehead with the flat of her hand anointed in oil. Holy Mandir woman who died of ragged fieldwork, housework, man, labor, collapsed in exhaustion at 30. Her name, too, is secret. Her name is her father picking up a cutlass and telling her to run. Her name is the bareness of her feet on the rain-packed brown earth, a splattering of terrors skidding from the pitch pine floorboard to the unpaved yard. And her name is in the pulse of the dholak. Her name is what she hears from the puja down the dirt road while fleeing from that killing. And though she has been dead before the end of indenture, if you find yourself in the cane fields past midnight, she may give you her name, her secret name. She may tell you how she was killed. She may show you the site where she was held down. And it is your job not to look away. And it is your job to listen. Thank you.
Wow, Shivani, you have me crying over here. But I will save those comments for the because from Shivani and Persona, we are moving to Desiree and cricket. Wendy has been drawing images of cricket for nearly 40 years. They were at first an exercise in nostalgia, a way for her to connect back to Trinidad when she was at art school in the UK. But these drawings from magazines developed into a lifelong passion. As she tells it, one day at a game, I was sitting and drawing, and I realized it's not so much about cricket. It's about drawing. Doing millions of drawings, I was finding that place of concentration and relaxation, learning how to look at things. I was finding my own groove as an artist, learning to move intuitively and to trust myself. Now, there are 3 galleries at the AMA, and the largest of them will become home to the largest exhibition of these drawings ever. And to bring them to life, I have called upon Desiree Seebaran. Desiree Seebaran, who I had the pure joy and luck of encountering at her reading earlier this year in Trinidad, is a poet, writer, and editor. Her work has been shortlisted for the 2014 Small Acts Literary Competition in Poetry and shortlisted in Frontier Poetry's Award for New Poets in 2017. Her work has been published in various reviews and journals, and her chapbook manuscript Canal Water won a commendation in 2018. Last year, Desiree won the poetry section of the 2019 Queen Mary Wasafiri New Writers Prize. I brought you some stars, guys. So I will turn it now over to Desiree.
Thank you, Andil, for that glowing introduction. And thank you for curating this very important show and for inviting me to share. Thanks also go out to the AMA director and the staff for working so hard to generously share this and other exhibitions in spite of the challenging times in which we now find ourselves. I'm very pleased to be part of Ms. Nanan's exhibition. Pleased as a Trini supporting another Trini as her stunning work is recognized. And pleased as a fellow creative who really found Ms. Nanan's work so resonant with many of the same themes as my own, So in contemplation of Ms. Nanan's cricket drawings, I composed a short piece to help celebrate her work, and it is rather obviously named Cricket. Bold strokes of black and brown men lithe against a colonial grey. A corkball hovers in the tension. The hunch and squat of concentrated sweat, stillness, a portly umpire, the stare of a bowler judging his casual prey, his linge body caught in the act, in balletic release, the hope of a region flung from his fingers. Ms. Nanan, in my contemplation of her work, I believe she uses cricket as a strong symbol of West Indian resilience, Caribbean resilience and resistance. And a lot of my work echoes this, as I mentioned before, but with different symbols. The first of the next 2 pieces I'll read for you guys is part of a longer published poem called Cracked. And the next poem I'll read after that is called Crossroads. Cracked. To get to the usefulness in a calabash, you must pick the fruit green. It may be above your reach, but stretch a little. Hold it carefully, then slowly saw its guts open. A brown calabash will shatter under the torture, but the green holds its shape, endures all violation. Hollow the halves of the gourd. Scrape until it feels it has nothing left to give. Then put it in the sun to dry. When the sun has baked the shell into a corpse brown as Bagotville canals, it is ready. Dip it into water. Drink. Bathe. This is what a calabash is good for. Calabashes have been found offering their zombie services in kitchens, bedrooms and bathrooms, in holy rites, drafted in as wash basins, holders for herbs and fruit, gourds to wash fellow dead, vessels for sweat rice, Thai foot, and other obeahs. And even in abandoned houses, you may find a cracked calabash, face down, stone hardened, but still standing guard. Crossroads. They are taking them, stringing them into lines, snaking them like links on cold chains, nameless. Our obedient ones are cold, naked, shivering, angry, bold, our decisions and incisions, flowering and bursting, black and red, crushed pods under a mother's grief, like crushed fever grass under the weight of boiling. This obedient land broken open under autopsy, leaving alive a graveled wound, softly gasping, a mass grave of dreams. The final piece that I'll read tonight is called Pekong. And I'm happy to say that, as Andil mentioned before, it won the poetry section of the Queen Mary Wasafiri New Writers Prize. And this piece alludes to the alienation of Black and brown bodies, both male and female, which I have seen in, Miss Nanan's work, and she's dealt with it with a lot more tenderness and optimism than I tend to feel. So, Pekong. You are 30 and too late. Pekong blisters the wrong side of your skin, black and ugly. Like iron screwed to ship's hull, the timber twisting cold metal into sin, black and ugly. Your face is a mask, eyes shuttered, calabash cheeks, and dark skin, black and ugly. The chorus leaps to your lips like prayer, a torrent of tongues that sing, black and ugly. These words are spiky, acid spells that slit the skin, black and ugly. They burn like cotton wicks in wax, turned to sooty film, black and ugly. Maybe the words hit your cheek, wet, flying from another woman's grin. You're black and ugly. Some tanty may have held you, consolingly. Don't cry, sweetie. You'll just get more black and ugly. How these words tied you is trivial. What matters are their hooks spreading black and ugly keloids down your spine, forcing flesh to flower, to survive, torn and swollen, black and ugly. And rage is frothing gently under lung as you smooth yourself into black and ugly panties. Paint your lips, see if that floral perfume hides the bite of your skin, black and ugly. You smile, speak, simmer, then catch a glimpse of yourself in some mirrored surface, black and ugly. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much. I mean, I'm really struck by the power of your visual metaphors, and I'm so glad you agreed to be part of this. I'll come back also to talk to you more, but finally, among our poets, we turn to Krishna. When I was a child, the Hindu god Krishna was omnipresent in my maternal grandparents' home. The centerpiece was a large cut golden mirror portrait under which annual prayers and readings about Krishna's teachings were hosted by my grandfather. I was an enthusiastic temple-going kid, but really dreaded these rituals. With literally thousands of more exciting, more melodramatic, more colorful adventures to draw upon, why, I thought, were these long evenings focused on a single conversation between these two guys, Krishna and his disciple, Arjun. Wendy Nanan's baby Krishnas, however, were immediately irresistible. Where the Krishna of my childhood seemed like a stranger, hers was instantly both mirror and mate. Now, I feel really personally connected to this project, and I was very keen for Wendy to add to her initial collection of 4 Krishnas. So in 2017, she completed Le Bébé Bleu for our collaboration, a Krishna that after getting to Trinidad from India goes to France. And this year, we are blessed with the unveiling of this magnificent 6th winged Krishna in the series. And to induct this very special Krishna, I've called upon Andre Bagoo. Andre is the author of 4 poetry collections. His work has appeared in journals such as Boston Review, Cincinnati Review, St. Petersburg Review, Poetry, and the Poetry Review. His fiction received honorable mention in the 2005 Derek Walcott Writing Prize, and he was recently selected for the Ernest Hemingway Foundation's 2020 anthology. Bagoo's essay collection on art and literature, the very, very hotly anticipated, like we really can't wait for it, The Undiscovered Country, is forthcoming soon from People Tree Press. Andre.
Thank you so much, Andil, for that kind introduction. And I'd just like to say congratulations to you and to the AMA for this groundbreaking show. It feels really pertinent to be a part of this, considering the moment in which we find ourselves now. And I'd also like to say thank you to Shivanee and to Desiree for your wonderful work today. So yes, as Andil mentioned, I've been paired with the newest baby Krishna. And I think, as the ambassador mentioned, the present, the now is fixed. But we know, as Wittgenstein said, the present is actually the key to eternity. And that is also true for this latest work by Wendy Nanan. Because the sky is lighter than paper, a manifesto of feathers. Blue, because my wings are the bookman's pages. Blue, because the island is holy, the wind high. Blue as in azure, as in cadmium, as in noise. Blue and black, because kisses hurt. Blue, when they saw me, they saw us. Blue, the night we were walking home, Josh, you, and I, and the homophobic thugs. Blue, the night outside the art gallery, when they chased us unwinged. Blue like Mary's robes, blue like the altar boy gown I wanted, because it was fabulous. Blue when they threw me out of the church, and I dreamt of Jesus, truly I did. Blue, and the cherub has turned blue, and the angel has turned blue, blue, into Krishna, blue, and I saw him one day in my dreams. Blue, shirt of blue school uniform, blue invisibility, blue. He touched my spine, and flutes sang in me. Blue, both mirror and mute. Blue the walls, the stones, the tomb. Blue once, but now, coolitude, réalité, blue. Blue Andean oceanisme. Blue antianité, négritude, bâtiment, not bâtiment. Blue for the way my heroes are dying, but blue mad for the second coming. Blue veins on every cock I ever sucked, blue power, blue notes, the currency of blue, melodies, you. rubber orchestras, true blue blood and blue collar, blue scrubs fighting red coats, blue ink for blue manifestos of blue feathers, disobedient walls, graffiti is blue, Jab Molassi is blue, and maybe the second coming.
Wow, thank you so much for that, Andre. Can we give like a virtual round of applause for all three? I mean, I'll clap really hard for all of it. But that was really, really wonderful. You know, I felt like this is a virtual opening of Wendy's show while we await for it to be really open. And I thought it was really important to capture the spirit of the work through this poetry, through people from her environment, through people who attend to the same kinds of questions that Wendy has attended to, and it represents a kind of continuity between you know, her work, and not just across time, but also across fields. Because you'll find in the creative world of Port of Spain, the poets and the artists and the writers often crisscross through these different disciplines. I'd like to turn it over to questions. Adriana, are there questions that you wanted to relay? No, I have to say, I'll start with, you know, Shivanee, it really hit me in the gut when you started to talk about, you know, your very last poem, and describing coming out of the cane, you know, in the cane field. And I thought, you know, I was back where I grew up, surrounded by cane field. But what really also hit me is one of the ways I got to school was because the school teacher named Kalauti, Miss Kalauti, used to pick me up and drop me back home. So there's this kind of moment, and you know, because you describe a moment which I placed myself in, and then when you said Kalauti, it was like, you know, it really touched me. I wondered if you could talk a little bit about the process of writing that poem, and in particular in imagining that space. Is that a space that is also familiar to you? Because, you know, that it is something about, I grew up really surrounded by cane field, and that kind of environment really has shaped who I am in ways that I'm still finding, that are still unraveling. So maybe Shivanee, if you could talk about that a little bit.
Absolutely. I grew up in and still return home to Las Lomas, which most people who are not from Las Lomas and its environs know because of its closeness to the Piarco International Airport. But Las Lomas is cradled within the larger area that we can think of as Caroni. And in that way, cane fields have been no stranger to me. I would see them every day going to school to and from Port of Spain, which was an alienating and othering experience. Before I had the language to think about what that meant, and it was the first time, and I think you and I have spoken about this, Andil, the first time in which I had to contend with the idea that rurality and being of the countryside was unappealing and something to feel shame over. A lot of the work that I find myself doing is reconciling myself in a post-shame environment to what Indo-Caribbean identity looks like and feels like for someone who disagrees with a lot of its racism and nationalism. But key to that has been finding a home in the works of other writers, and most principally for this work that I'm doing now and these poems that I'm making now, Gayatri Bahadur's Kooli Woman, which above almost all things taught me that an Indo-Caribbean woman could, without asking permission from anyone, most particularly Indo-Caribbean men, research and curate and write her own narratives and be prepared to accept places where the archive would fail our imagination, where imagination had to almost be wedded to the archive to make meaning. And then how that relates to the poem Cane Field is that I have been obsessed with investigating the names of Indian women that have fallen out of fashion, Kalauti and Indrawati, and names that are considered old-fashioned and embarrassing. I'm interrogating myself first in the question of how I came to receive this education that those names could embarrass anybody. And more than that, what are the stories and histories and herstories behind those names that fuel them, that make them just as important as my own blood to discover.
Thank you.
So we have a question from the public, but before we start with the first question, I just want to make a little note in telling you that actually the other baby Krishnas are part of an exhibition the Art Museum of the Americas organized with international arts and artists, and they are going to be shown pretty soon in another museum. So we are working with Wendy's work all over the place. And I thought that was really important to let you know that that we fell in love with Wendy's work a while ago, and that's why I met Andil, and this is how everything is happening now. This has been happening for over 5 years, as Andil stated. So one of our attendees is asking, he's wondering how each of the poets feels about the relationship between reading verse and visual art.
What I take your question to be about is that issue of how does poetry relate to visual art in terms of a visual medium. And I think what is most apparent is that many poems are concerned very much with their form on the page. So you may not have been able to tell, well, you would not have been able to tell based on what I was reading, but what I was reading was actually an acrostic, which is a form of poem where there's a line of text, there's a word that's actually spelled out throughout, spining through the lines that go horizontal in the poem. And I actually chose that in relation to my piece to spell out a word, rainbow, in homage to the rainbow on Wendy's baby Krishna. And I think that's a pertinent example of how poetry itself can be visual art. A poem is very much concerned with how it looks on the page. Sometimes that is done perhaps to underline a point or to create some sort of effect. So, and then of course we have that whole very ancient tradition of poetry, which is concerned with what is called the ekphrestic, which is poems that respond to specific pieces of art. And that is another very fertile way in which a poem can engage with art. And then we can go even deeper and talk about language and what language means and what the words, what the images in a poem actually do. When we think of things like how haiku, for instance, or even film poetry replicates that sense of one image folding into the other. What is language if not image? You know, so I think that's a really very rich area to talk about, and I don't know what the other poets have to say.
Desiree, I wanted to ask in particular around cricket, because I know, like me, I play cricket as a kid. I don't follow cricket in any way, but I really love these drawings and I immediately loved them. And I know in the process of you working on those cricket drawings, you developed a kind of a proximity to them. And I wondered if you could talk a little bit about how you drew your poem through those drawings.
Yeah, sure. I definitely would like to. It was strange because in my work now, I am dealing with not historical stuff in terms of very far back in history, but I'm dealing with my just very familial relationships. And the cricket struck me because it was a point of contention between my father and myself. Because all West Indian fathers, I say all, love cricket. And we would fight about it because he would want to watch cricket and I obviously would not want to look at cricket on television, and we'd be back and forth, and it would be this thing between us. And I think I put up a block in my brain as a result, that I would never look at cricket. I hate cricket. I don't understand cricket, anything like that. But somehow in looking at the work that she was doing, and looking at the moments that she captured and the fluidity of them, and all of a sudden understanding how cricket kind of pulled the region together. You understand? Just these guys on a field, but everyone kind of waiting with bated breath for those moments that she was painting, that she was drawing. It was I don't know, it felt very, suddenly very cohesive, a very cohesive metaphor for the West Indies, not us as individual islands, but us as a whole, and us as a whole kind of reaching towards something greater than our individual selves. And I began again to understand my father and other men like him, and why they would have been gravitating towards something like that, something that showed them themselves. So yeah, that's how I became obsessed with those cricket drawings. Yeah.
I just, as a footnote to what you said, just because there's so much resonance between your experience and Wendy's relationship to those drawings, is that her own relationship to her parents figure really deeply in those drawings. Like her mother in particular was really obsessed with cricket, and she has this wonderful story of her mother jumping over security and running to the field to meet her favorite cricketer. And then also, there's a kind of intimacy to them that is, very unusual, I think, in how male athleticism is often imaged. So I think.
Yes, I agree. Cricket is a very different game to the sports that we look at now. There's a grace to the game that I think the West Indies team at the height of their success really showed off, and it's almost arousing, almost sexual in a way, the way that they move, so the embracing of one's complete self in this game, that is supposed to be, it's not the toxic masculinity that we have been taught to think about. It's a very kind of all embracing. It's your whole body. It's your, I don't even think I'm describing it correctly. It pulls the way it pulls a crowd in, because of how they move and how they, how they stop the ball, when the ball is hit and everybody's eyes kind of goes in one direction. It's I don't think I'm answering your question, but yeah.
No, you do. And actually, one of the other resonances is just this idea of bringing the West Indies together. The cricket drawing started with the Miss Wendy's encounter and being misrecognized. So here she is in the UK, she gets called Paki, and her drawing cricket began as a way of answering back, I'm West Indian.
Yes.
And so, in that moment, she also concocts this Caribbean identity that is, that subverts the racist remark, that, does what you have just talked about in bringing us together. Because of the time, I'm going to just just read one of the questions that's been placed by another poet, Rajiv Mohabir, and ask Shivanee to answer it. Just because
Wonderful. Yes, that's perfect.
few minutes. And the question to Shivanee, if you could take this on, Shivanee, is what is the hardest part about the process of ekphrasis, the reigning of the poem versus the wildness that the poem begs of the poet?
I feel like, first of all, that's a immaculate question from Rajiv, and I would not expect any less. It's a really confronting and challenging question. I feel, in a way, it suits the spirit of what my engagement has been with Wendy's work, really uncannily. And I feel in these new poems that have begun to emerge in response to Wendy's work, a certain compulsion of fidelity to try to be and remain in conversation with the visual artist, and more so with the work which she's presented. But also, I acknowledge where, and I think it can be most difficult to acknowledge that there is a point at which you can use the work on which the ekphrasis is based as a crutch to conceal the most painful, the most revealing, the most embarrassing secret of the poem itself. So I try to think of the function of ekphrasis as both revelatory and humbling. If there is a way in which I have a synchronicity with work made by a female Caribbean artist that I want to be in conversation to, that's different from the sort of ekphrasis that confronts racist and systemic post-colonial power, which is a different kind of engagement, one for which I feel no respect and no compunction to do good, then to go back to the first instance of engagement, which is me, Andre, Desiree, not to speak for them, but a benevolent exchange. How do I witness the work that is in front of me in a sustained and generous way, while also allowing the work, as Rajiv asks, to maintain its own wildness? I think the true answer here is that there is no easy formula to it. I try to be attentive, to be humble, to be fully committed to being wrong and infallible in the experience, and also, I think, ultimately to open myself to where the work can take me, especially if it ends up not showing me in the best light.
Thank you. I knew this hour would go by far too quickly. And before I give the last word to Pablo, I just want to say a huge thank you to everyone again, our wonderful poets. Thank you to all the people who signed on. It's really lovely to see so many people coming on. And when I just look through the names, in addition to Rajiv, there's so many contemporaries, Gayatri Bahadur, Kanisha Prasad. There's so many of Lisa Uttar, and I'm sure I'm leaving out people, and I apologize for that. But also some of the icons like Roseanne Kanai, who is a critical figure in Caribbean studies, and some of our great visual artists like Bernadette Prasad from Guyana and the wonderful Kelly Sinepa Marie from Guadeloupe. So thank you so much for sharing in this virtual opening of Wendy's show and this moment to pause on some of her work. There will be many more things. One thing that will happen is that we're looking at turning these poems into chapbooks, so keep an eye on Wendy's Facebook page for more details about that. And I'm sure you'll hear a lot more from the AMA as we proceed with the unveiling of the exhibition in live. And I hope to see all of you soon. Thank you so much for joining us. And I'll turn it over to Pablo, and then there'll be some music to take us out.
I am overwhelmed. I simply want to welcome all of you that have never been to the Art Museum of the Americas. Thank you for joining our family. Thank you for joining this community. We are part of you, you are part of us. We are the Organization of American States, an organization of governments, but ultimately it's about people. And there has been a voice that's been missing, and that voice is the voice of Wendy Nanan and everyone and everything she represents. So we're so excited to hear her voice, to hear all of you. And we invite you to stay in tune and be part of our community. Ama, after all, in Spanish means love. And we want to transmit and share that with all of you. So stay tuned. We have...
Exhibition is open until the end of the year.
Our museum is currently closed, so we are coming to you via this device. And Ama at Home uses the 4 walls of social media: Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. You choose your wall, we'll be there. Right now, we've been enjoying Wendy Nanan on those 4 walls, but we also have our wonderful collection, hashtag Ama at Home. And we will be featuring a beautiful hashtag, hashtag Amalogia, which will describe the beauty of the museum. Thank you very much. And let's put on the music.
Thanks, everyone. We can see all the people who are here.
Bye. Thank you for joining us.